Hey besties, it's Sarah. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a vlog concept that I've seen on a lot of people's channels. I think most recently I saw Meg with Books do this, but also Books with Lala. Many other people have done this before, so this is not original by any means. But essentially I'm going to be reading the lowest rated books on my TBR. So to choose the books for this video, we are going to just use my TBR shelf from Goodreads. Interestingly enough, I actually don't really use like the want to read feature on Goodreads very often, unless I get recommended a book through like a video or TikTok and I don't think I'm gonna remember the title of the book, then I add it. But to be honest, a lot of these books on here were added as far back as like 2016, so I don't even know if I still want to read these books. So let's go on over to our handy dandy Goodreads app and just see what I have a cooking in there, because I literally have no idea. Like, I really don't add to it that often, and even when I do, I forget that I did it. First, we have a Paul Tremblay book, which I've actually read him once before. I read Head Full of Ghosts, and I didn't really like that book. I think I gave it like 2 stars. I just wasn't really vibing with it, but I know that I added this to my TBR like a long time ago, because I think I saw Chapter Stacks talk about it in a video, and I just randomly added it because back then I wasn't really reading a lot of adult books, so I knew I would forget it. So I think this has been on my TBR for like a long ass time. It's rated 3.31 stars, 47,000 ratings, so it's statistical significance. A lot of people are mixed on it. From my memory, it is something to do with people staying in a cabin and a bunch of strangers show up and they're kind of creepy. It kind of reminds me of the plot of the movie The Strangers, but we'll just have to see how it goes when I get into it, because I honestly couldn't tell you the plot. And you know, I could click on these books to actually tell you what they're about, but I'm not going to do that. Then next on our list we have Tinfoil Butterfly. There are less ratings on this. There's only like 1,100, but I believe I heard of this from Kayla from Books and Lala. I think she might have put it on a favorites list. I know this is a thriller. I could not tell you what it's about. Maybe we should click on it and find out. And you know, I could click on these books to actually tell you what they're about, but I'm not going to do that. Basically, it says something about a girl is hitchhiking. She's trying to outrun her past. She gets picked up by someone who's hot but dumb. Something's creepy. There's a little boy in a tinfoil mask who steals her gun before begging her to help him get rid of quote-unquote George. Sounds weird. Knowing that Kayla recommended it, it's probably going to be weird because she likes weird books. Then next we have Unbury Carol. I put this on my TBR like way back when, even before this book came out, because I read Bird Box a while back. I think I read Bird Box in 2018, and I've always wanted to read more Josh Malerman, but then I never got around to doing it. So yeah, I kind of know what this one is about. I believe it's about this woman named Carol who marries a man that takes advantage of her, and then she ends up like in an accident, and then she kind of like comes back from the dead or like from her coma, and then she's like seeking her revenge. That's like my general idea of what it's about. So lastly, the 4th book that we're gonna read is The Third Mrs. Durst by Aguirre. I found this because there is a woman that I follow on Goodreads, because one time I was reading a series. It was actually Shauna Maguire's like urban fantasy series. I cannot remember what it's called. October Day, I think. I was reading those and I came across this woman named Anne who left a bunch of reviews, and I agreed with all of her reviews so much that I just like wanted to hear more of her opinions on Goodreads, so I added her, which is so random because I normally only follow people I know or like follow, you know, like subscribers who add me as friends on Goodreads. So I found her very randomly and I was like, yeah, don't mind if I do. And so I remember her rating this kind of highly, and so that's how this ended up on my TBR. But it is so random because it literally has less than 1,000 reviews. So although it is not statistically significant that not many people like it, it's fine, because maybe I can just add some reviews, and if I like it, maybe we can get more reviews added to it in general. Again, I don't really remember what this one's about at all, so I will read the synopsis on this one. We'll be surprised on half of them and kind of informed on the other 2. So it says, a twisted Cinderella story, and this woman is living in her husband's shadow. He controls her every move, what she wears, the food she eats, the friends she's allowed to make. If she disobeys, there are consequences, and he has all the power. And so it kind of seems like this rich guy's taking advantage of her, and so she wants to get out. And so death may be the only exit she's allowed, just like his first wife. Ooh, interesting. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to get into all these to see what we think. Do we agree with everyone on Goodreads? Are they bad? Have you read these? Do you think they're bad? If you've already read these, you can predict before I get into it. I don't really know how high my hopes is for any of these because I added most of them to my TBR so long ago and all of them are really random. I guess I'll just trust the people that made me add them back in the day, like when they got recommended to me, and perhaps I can like them too, even though most people don't. So I have finished 2 books since we last spoke, first of which is Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay. I definitely understand why this has mixed reviews. You're either gonna love it or hate it. And I feel like I unfortunately am in the latter camp. I didn't like it. It's not that Paul Tremblay can't write good prose. Like, he knows his way around the English language. Like, he can weave together a pretty sentence. What I don't like is that those sentences make up storytelling that I just do not vibe with. You might like Cabin at the End of the World if you enjoy quiet horror, because I'm gonna be upfront, not a lot happens in this book. Essentially, we have this gay couple that has an adopted daughter and they've gone on vacation to a cabin in the middle of the woods. They're very far outside of civilization. They don't have cell service. They just want to unplug and have a nice time. And while they're there, a group of kind of like interesting people show up and start telling them that the world is going to end and that they need to make a decision about some things. And so it's like this huge like pressurized situation where like they want these people to like leave but they won't leave, and then they've like cut all the phone lines and the landlines and they don't have cell service. And so it's a little bit like The Strangers. I think I mentioned that earlier. Also, every time I say that it's like The Strangers, I've actually never seen that movie. I just know that it's about strangers breaking into someone's house. This book is basically just a very long conversation or argument, if you will, because after these people break into the cabin, they just spend the entire book trying to convince the main characters to like do something. And so it's just them going back and forth and arguing and trying to figure out what's going on for like literally the entire book. There are some deaths in it, like for sure, because it is horror and there is some gory scenes, but ultimately they weren't very scary. And I don't really understand the point. Like, I feel like this is the kind of book that's for like someone who's really into like literary analysis and like symbolism. I'm not that girl. I'm not trying to write an English paper when I read a book. I just want to be entertained. And unfortunately I was not entertained, which was really disappointing because the beginning portion was so interesting. The book opens with the little girl out playing with grasshoppers, and then this really tall guy named, I believe, Leonard, shows up and starts talking to her, and he's very like creepy and he's kind of like hinting that something's coming. And so she's like 6 years old. So from her perspective, she's just like making a new friend. They're like naming grasshoppers together, and it kind of like adds to the suspense of like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? And then when the strangers show up at the cabin with Leonard, you're like, oh my god, something big's gonna happen. And then they literally just argue for the rest of the book, and it ends on a very big cliffhanger. Like, you don't really know if what was going on the whole book was true or not. It's kind of up to you to decide, which I know that's a very common trope in horror. Like, you're gonna get that a lot, which is fine if I liked the rest of the book, but I really did not. So unfortunately I am rating it 2 stars for the sin of being boring. I think I need to give up on Paul Tremblay because I also did not really enjoy Head Full of Ghosts for similar reasons. Head Full of Ghosts definitely had more that happened in it because it's a possession story, but ultimately I didn't vibe with it either. Like, I just felt like it fell flat for me. So I get that some people like him, and I can see why his books could be divisive. They're not like offensive, they just were both kind of boring to me. So you might like them, but I did not. Okay, so then the next book that I finished was The Third Mrs. Durst by Anne Aguirre. I did learn that that last name is pronounced Aguirre, not Aguirre. I think I'm actually gonna end up giving this book about 3.5 stars. It's not quite a 4, but it's definitely not a 3. I really enjoyed it more than other thrillers that I've read. It's about this woman named Marlena who grows up in poverty, and when she's 16, she runs away and she becomes a supermodel, and through being a supermodel, she connects with this man, Mr. Durst, and he is a rich older man that loves to marry young women, and so he decides that he wants to take her under his wing and like mold her, and so she gives up modeling and she goes off and she marries him. But little does she know, she is actually the 3rd Mrs. Durst, meaning that his first 2 wives actually have passed away. And so it's like this big mystery shrouding him. It's sort of like a Bluebeard vibe of like, why have his wives all died up to this point? And after she enters the marriage, she finds out that he's like super controlling and abusive and just not the man that he made her believe he was when they were dating. And so the rest of the story is sort of her trying to navigate being in this situation and trying to get out and get revenge on him, sort of. And I liked it. I did. I'm not gonna give it 4 stars because there were a couple of things with the writing and the storytelling that just didn't feel like I wanted to give it all the way to 4 stars. hopefully that makes sense. But you know when you're like reading a book and you're like, okay, this definitely isn't middle of the road, but it's not like 4 or 5 stars. That's kind of how I felt about it. I really enjoyed it though. It kept my attention the whole time. I was always interested in the story. I really liked the perspective of Marlena because it's told in first person, and I liked that while she was telling us things, even she was being kind of secretive, so we sort of figured out more and more about her side of things like as she kept telling the story. So some things were still twists, and I didn't really love like the way it wrapped up. I guess that's probably why I'm keeping it from being 4 stars. It felt very like tie a bow on it, and it was very rushed towards the end. Like I feel like the buildup of like the abuse and everything going into the marriage was like really drawn out, but then the ending was like maybe only like, I want to say like 1/5 of the book. So I don't know, overall I really liked it. I don't know if I would like recommend it with my full chest, but I definitely might like throw it on a list of like thrillers that like entertained me. It's like nothing that is going to break new ground for you if you read it, but I really liked it. I don't really know why it has such bad reviews. I mean, maybe it's because people are like me, where they're like, okay, this was good, but it's not more than like 3.5 stars good, because I think the average rating was like a 3.3 or 3.5. So that kind of makes sense to me because that's also like where I'm kind of falling on it. So I would definitely say that Goodreads has it right with the way this book was rated. And yeah, I will add to the less than 1,000 Goodreads reviews on it, but I liked it. So today I finished Tinfoil Butterfly, and I am really surprised by how much I liked it. I'm gonna be upfront, when it first started, I was like, what is this? I'm not into it. It kind of just throws you directly into the action, and I was just really confused because the prose is very, it's not whimsical, but it's very beautiful and poetic. And so the main character, Emma, is not what I would call an unreliable narrator, but she gives you the story in bits and pieces. Like she is doing something in the present, but she's also giving you her memories of everything up to that point, so you're not really getting everything all at once, so it's a little bit confusing. So at the start of the book, Emma is in a car with a man named Lowell, and she is riding with him because she's hitchhiking to the Badlands, and we don't know much about it besides that she just needs to get to the Badlands, and she met Lowell at a rest stop and he had a car that she liked, so she hitched a ride with him, and he is not a very good guy, and so she does everything in her power to kind of get away from him. And then she ends up having to wander through the woods. She steals his car, she drives a distance, and then she comes upon this sort of like abandoned ghost town, and there she meets the little boy that was described in the synopsis. So like I was saying, initially I wasn't really into it because it was just a little bit odd, and I don't always do well with weird books. But the longer I read it, the more I really fell in love with the writing style, and I really liked the main character. She is the classic, like, morally gray, not a very good person main character who is sort of reflecting on all of her actions that have led her up to this point. And just the way that it was written was so beautiful and satisfying. I really enjoyed it, and also I felt like the actual like suspense and thriller aspects were pretty good. I don't know if I would qualify this entirely as a thriller. Kind of had like horror vibes or just like suspense vibes. I don't really know what genre it would fall under. I'm probably just gonna go with thriller, but I don't really feel like it's a traditional thriller. Why was that so hard to say? I don't really know how much more of the story I should give away. I kind of feel like just leaving it at the fact that Emma is the one narrating, and that, again, she's not unreliable, but she is thinking about things in a very like poetic and sort of reflective, retrospective way. And so she says a lot of things that are sometimes contradictory. She says a lot of things about herself that you're not sure if you should believe, and you just kind of have to piece the story together bit by bit as it goes on. And it was weird at first, like I was saying, like it didn't really click with me initially, but I'm really shocked at how much I liked this book. I think I'm gonna give it like 4 stars, and I might even put it on my favorites of this year. It just made me think about a lot of things, and I just think that the writing style was just so delectable. I don't know why that's the word that came to mind, but it just was like, I just loved it. I felt like I was being fed. Like, it was just really good. But like I said, even the parts that were meant to be suspenseful actually were suspenseful, and I really enjoyed that. Like, I had moments where I was stressed out. I really wanted to know what was going to happen. It ends on a bit of an open-ended sort of cliffhanger, but again, for thrillers and horror, I don't feel like that's a weird thing to happen. So I didn't mind the ending at all. I'm very curious to see on Goodreads like what people didn't like about this book. I guess it could just not click with someone if they thought they were getting like a very straightforward like traditional thriller, but for me, I don't know, it was kind of a hit. I really liked it, but I kind of understand the mid Goodreads rating because of it being one of those books that feels like it would be divisive. Like you'd either like really vibe with the storytelling or you would just really be like, what the fuck, I don't really like this. Luckily I'm in the former camp, so I don't know, I feel like this book was a success. It could be that the word butterfly is in the title. Lately I am very huge into butterflies. Like I have this little butterfly necklace that I wear all the time, and as you saw in my last clip I had butterfly makeup on. I'm just like a butterfly girly, so perhaps that was just really a good omen for me to read this book. So yeah. I have terrible news, besties. I am going to DNF Unbury Carol by Josh Malerman. I want to say I've listened to an hour, 2 hours of the audiobook. I'm not really sure how long it's been, but it is a slog. And I don't know who labeled the genre of this book, but it is not horror. I really thought that this was a horror book, but it is literally just like a historical fiction Western with like weird magic in it. And I'm not vibing. I'm not liking it. I'm bored. It's just not giving. There's definitely a reason why this is a Josh Malerman book that I feel like no one ever talks about. I'm not even going to rate it. I'm just going to mark it as did not finish on Goodreads and leave it at that. I know that that's not a very satisfactory way to end this vlog, just with a book that I'm just like gonna give up on, but I simply cannot and will not continue to read this. I'm just so bored, and I'm really disappointed because I used an Audible credit on it. I really would have thought that the Josh Malerman book on this list would be one that I liked, but ultimately it's not for me, besties. I would say that I even liked the Paul Tremblay book more. Even though that was rated like 2 stars, it still was interesting enough for me to finish it all the way through. But this one is just major DNF vibes, and I don't DNF books that often. I really only do it when I see no redeeming qualities, and I think that if I were to finish this book, it would maybe get 2 stars, maybe 3 possibly if something happened in the plot to kind of pick up. But as of right now, it's really boring. I don't really like Westerns. It's not really my vibe. I don't really seek out Westerns as a genre. I knew that that was an element, but I thought that it was a horror book that just happened to be in a Western setting. But it's more like it's a Western novel with a little bit of magic and suspense in it. There's not even really that many horror vibes. I'm giving up. I'm giving up. Carol can remain buried. That pretty much brings us to the end of this vlog. So to recap, we read Cabin at the End of the Woods. Didn't like that book. Kind of understand why it has mixed ratings. Then we read The Third Mrs. Durst. I really liked that one, like 3.5 star rating from me, which kind of makes sense why that is the average rating on it as a whole on Goodreads. So I totally understand where that's coming from as well. And then we read Tinfoil Butterfly, and I really liked that. That one seems a little bit more divisive. I think it has a slightly lower rating, and I really liked it. It really worked for me. I liked the weirdness. I liked the narrative. I liked the way it was told, and I felt the suspense, and I really enjoyed it, but I could totally understand why someone else wouldn't like it. And then lastly, we're just gonna DNF Unbury Carol because that book is boring as fuck. I don't really know what we were supposed to get out of this besides saying that I think the ratings on Goodreads actually make sense for literally all of these books. Maybe not the Josh Malerman one. I feel like it could be even lower personally. Like I think what is it, like a 3.2 or 3.3? I think that one could go below a 3 if you know what I mean. But everything else, I could see the merit of liking it. I also could see why someone wouldn't like it. So I kind of feel like somewhere in the 3-star rating makes sense. So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this and seeing my journey. I realized that I filmed all of my clips in my desk chair, so it's gonna kind of look like I just kind of came to the same spot every day to film, and I don't know if that's very interesting for you guys, but we did it. We did it, besties. Well, we didn't really do it because I did DNF one book, but we kind of did it. So yeah, let me know down below if you've read any of these, what your thoughts are, if you'd like to see me do another video like this or review another concept that you think I should do. Thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day.